Hey, so, like everyone else, I've been looking at this blob thing in the DLC story trailer, trying to figure out what it is. Is it made of godskin? Is it a belly? Is it a womb? But the more I look at it, it's totally the head of a snake, right? There's a cheekbone, a nostril, and Marika reaches into the eye. But if it is a snake, what does that mean? Well, I think this snake could be the Gloam-eyed Queen. Let me break it down for you. To start, let's go over what we know about the Gloam-eyed Queen. So, what do we know? The Gloam-eyed Queen was said to be an Empyrean. She led the Godskin Apostles, who were servants of destined death, and she cradled them as newborns. She wielded the Godslayer's greatsword and the God-slaying Black Flame. And finally, she was defeated at the hands of Malekith, and the Rune of Death, the source of the Godskin's power, was sealed away. Oh, and she must have a Gloam eye, or eyes, whatever that means. So anyway, this is essentially everything we know about her, without drawing conclusions on our own. But what are the Godskins? How are they created? Let's take a look at them. So, the Gloam-eyed Queen led the Godskin Apostles and cradled them as newborns. But who gave birth to them? Well, the Godskins have snake parts and snake-like attributes, so I don't think it's too much of a stretch to assume they were born of a snake, like Raya. Speaking of Raya, her questline includes a very interesting item, the Serpent's Amnion, which is guarded by a Godskin noble. The Serpent's Amnion item description calls it an amnion from the mother's womb which cradles the poor unwanted offspring of a repellent birthing ritual. Does this description just refer to Raya? No, I don't think so. I think this is a hint at how the Godskins themselves were created, a repellent birthing ritual involving a snake. Why else would a Godskin noble be guarding it? It's also interesting that, in a game with so much symbolism and imagery related to motherhood and birth, this item description is the only time the word womb is mentioned, so it may be more significant than just an item in Raya's questline. The language used in this description is also similar to the description of the Godskin swaddling cloth, a cloth used by the Gloam-eyed Queen to cradle newborn apostles. But what's even more interesting to me is where this item is found. The Godskin swaddling cloth is dropped by a spirit caller snail, which summons Godskins in battle. The spirit caller snail, upon further inspection, isn't really a snail, but a smooth-skinned snake. It seems it could even be made of a similar material to what the Godskins wear. Which brings me to the point of this video. Take another look at this thing Marika reaches her hand into in the DLC story trailer. I think it looks like the head of a snake with Marika reaching into its eye. A snake with smooth skin, like the spirit caller snail. The eyelid even has a stitch-like pattern, which brings to mind the stitched-together skin worn by the Godskins. I think this being is the Gloam-eyed Queen, a snake, or even a spirit caller snail, that birthed the Godskin Apostles herself. And I think the Godskin Apostles wear smooth skin stitched together to mimic the appearance of this snake. But the question remains, what does Marika pull out of the eye socket? In my story trailer analysis video, I theorized that the massive bodies we see here could be the Crucible, the primordial form of the Erd Tree. And I think this scene is showing Marika creating the Erd Tree and the Golden Order. The Mending Rune of the Death Prince description says the Golden Order was created by confining destined death. And Finger Reader Enya describes the Rune of Death as the forbidden shadow plucked from the Golden Order upon its creation. So, removing the Rune of Death was the inciting incident to the creation of the Golden Order and the Erd Tree. And so, I think this scene is showing Marika removing the Rune of Death from the eye of the Gloam-eyed Queen before creating the Golden Order. In this video, lore YouTuber Kosmos suggests that the fragment of the Rune of Death stolen from Malekith is actually the Beast Eye. I like this idea, and I'd also like to add that this missing eye on Melina is the same eye we see being reached into by Marika, the right eye of the snake. It's also interesting that when Melina uses her tree spell in the fight against Morgott, the symbol that appears is the Sigil of the Crucible, the same crucible where this snake resides, according to my interpretation. After all, the snake-like aspects of the Godskins are said to be not unlike the Crucible. Makes sense, if the Crucible contains a giant snake that birthed them. But speaking of snakes, there's another character I need to mention. I've seen a lot of people theorize that Messmer is actually the son of Radagon and the Gloam-eyed Queen. Now, if I'm right about the Gloam-eyed Queen being a snake, this could explain why Messmer has such a strong association with snakes. This relationship between Radagon and the snake which birthed Messmer could be the seduction and betrayal referred to in the trailer. He does have a bit of resemblance to the Godskins after all. And since it seems Messmer was banished to the Land of Shadow, he would definitely fit the description of the Serpent's Amnion, an unwanted offspring of a repellent birthing ritual. This could also explain why the serpent is seen as such a blasphemous symbol in the Lands Between. If the Gloam-eyed Queen is a snake, and Marika had her killed in order to create the Golden Order, it makes sense that she would try and turn the people against the symbol of the serpent, and it also follows that she would hide her serpent-like son to cover up the secret. I'd also like to suggest another possibility. It's possible that this snake isn't the Gloam-eyed Queen herself, but rather a separate being, a sort of Serpent God, which was served or worshipped by the Gloam-eyed Queen. Maybe this Serpent God was the true keeper of destined death, and the Gloam-eyed Queen was her daughter, who she appointed as the general of her Godskin army. And if Melina is the Gloam-eyed Queen, then perhaps the mother she refers to, who birthed her at the foot of the Erd Tree, is not Marika, but rather this Serpent God of the Crucible. There is a Serpent God mentioned in the game, which many people assume to be the God-devouring serpent which merged with Rykard. When I first played Elden Ring, I originally thought that the God-devouring serpent was the Gloam-eyed Queen, due to the serpent features of the Godskins, and the fact that it's, well, a God-devouring serpent. But in this trailer, the snake doesn't look like the God-devouring serpent, because it's white and doesn't have scales. Maybe these two snakes are relatives, or mates. If this snake was the mate of the God-devouring serpent, maybe that's why Marika's seduction of it is described as an affair. But whatever their relationship, I do think these two snakes are connected. It's also been pointed out many times that the mass of bodies in the trailer looks a lot like the Blasphemous Blade, wielded by the God-devouring serpent after merging with Rykard. And it's also interesting that the Serpent God's curved sword and the Godskin swaddling cloth have similar effects, draining HP from slaying enemies. Just something to think about. Finally, I've got a few more thoughts to share on this topic. Now, you might think the Gloam-eyed Queen can't be a snake, because she was an Empyrean, and all the Empyreans we know of have human-like forms. But I also think it's possible that this snake could have a human form. Maybe it's Melina, or maybe it's someone else entirely. The description for Lanciax's glaive states that the ancient dragon Lanciax was able to take the form of a human. And if Placidusax could be Elden Lord, it wouldn't surprise me too much if a snake could be an Empyrean. And finally, as a devout Melina isn't the Gloam-eyed Queen believer, I'd like to suggest an alternate possibility. Maybe the Frenzied Flame ending doesn't show Melina revealing herself as the Gloam-eyed Queen, but rather being possessed by the Gloam-eyed Queen, or whatever this snake is. I mean, Melina doesn't have this appearance with the purple eye aside from this cutscene, so maybe she's only possessed by the Gloam-eyed Queen at that moment. The Godskins are weak to sleep, the power of Saint Trina. So maybe, if I'm right about Melina being Saint Trina, maybe Saint Trina has a weakness to the Gloam-eyed Queen's powers. That doesn't quite explain Melina having the Crucible Sigil on her tree spell, but I'm just grasping at straws here. So, what do you think? Is the Gloam-eyed Queen a snake? Is she Melina? Is she Star Scourge Radahn for some reason? I also want to shout out Garrulous Goldmask, who helped me write this video. He has a great video exploring the connections between the Gloam-eyed Queen and the Spirit Caller Snail, so definitely check that out. And if you like what I do, follow me on Twitch, where I stream challenge runs and random stuff with friends. We're currently doing an Elden Ring co-op randomizer run, so check it out if you're interested. And be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more nonsense like this. Peace.